Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Before I start on the purpose of the video, just a quick reminder about my live broadcast. I'd like to say tonight, but in reality it's tomorrow morning. The actual time is 1 o'clock Monday morning, Greenwich Mean Time. I'll put the link to your time zone city converter under this video as well, so you've got it under the current video, but basically it's a safe link to use, so don't worry about clicking on it. And basically you put in 0100 and London on one side, and then put your city in on the other side, and it'll tell you the time. Yeah, and that'll be the time in your city when I'll be going live. Please join me, as I said, at that time of the night. I don't really want to sit there and talk to myself, and we'll see how we go. But try and join me, even if it's only to say hi. It'll be my first one, and well, if it doesn't work very well, it may be my last. No, I'm only joking. But it's not the sort of thing I'd want to do frequently anyway. I'm more comfortable in this environment. Okay, today's subject is specifically Dendrobiums, but what I'm going to say about them translates to many other types of orchids depending on the type of Dendrobium, if you see what I mean. And although it's winter at the moment, I'm going to follow the care through all 4 seasons. But obviously the most convenient part to start, I'm sorry about the rain, it's just one of them days. I know some people at the moment could do with absolute downpours to get rid of some very bright orange that's creeping across the hillsides. Be safe. Yeah, so I'm going to start with the winter, yeah? And I can't do Dendrobiums, or any orchids really, without dividing them up into groups. Otherwise I'm going to repeat myself for the same orchids, so I always divide them up into sets. Now I'm in the middle of watering at the moment. I've paused at this point because it's a convenient point, because all of my resting Dendrobiums have now been watered, so they're down, so I can get at them. And what I'll do is, for each set I'll put a pop-up on there with their names, yeah? Now these might not be your sets, but they're my sets, and this is how I work, yeah? So set number 1 are my resting Dendrobiums, which at the moment are getting a little trickle of water, not a lot, no feed, and they get that about every 5 or 6 days, and it really is a trickle. I'm trying to keep them quite dry, yeah, but not bone dry. I don't believe in that. So they, you know, the ones that have been watered today will be dry at the longest time in 24 hours, but they'll probably dry a bit quicker than that, and then they'll stay dry till their next watering. So they are staying absolutely dry for some time, but I do have relatively high humidity in here, yeah? To keep orchids bone dry with little humidity in the air might not be the best of ideas. Okay, so that's my winter care for my resting Dendrobiums. They're all over the place at the moment. Those aren't. This one is. That is Findlayanum. I might have to look at several of the labels. This is Jenkinsii. This is Jenkinsii crossed with aggregatum. This is the one we're watching, that new growth hanging down there, to see if it desiccates or not. So those go together. They're treated exactly the same, or, you know, as I go around. This one's just had a bug spray because I've spotted a few, I won't say many, but there were a few mealybugs on this when I got it down, so that's just had a bug spray, so I don't want to get my hands on it at the moment. And that's Friedrichianum, lovely yellow blooms, has bloomed for me before. It's still doing a bit of autumn, I don't want to touch it. So there are the odd leaves still dropping. That will continue throughout the winter for many of them. Those don't tend to drop leaves very often. That one's only just started to drop its leaves on the very oldest canes. whereas this one will drop quite a few leaves as it goes along. And then over here is a bit of an assortment really. This is Dendrobium nesta, which is an anosmum cross, and to all intents and purposes can be treated exactly the same as anosmum. That is in effect in its total winter rest at the moment. The cane stopped growing a while ago, it hasn't had any feed for a while, and it's just had a little drop of water around the outside of that bark without getting the main mass of moss wet. That's how I water them when I'm resting them, and then that won't get any more water for probably 5, maybe 6 days, depending on the weather. This is anosmum. This one's a nuisance because it's got 2 new growths on it. So this one gets a little more water because I don't want those to totally stop growing. But its main cane that it grew this year has finished growing, and I'm hoping for blooms on that cane and possibly on a couple of the older ones as well that are not my doing. They were there when I got it. So that's that one. Those two go together. And then this is a bit of an assortment at the moment. So they're that one's got no name. So hang on, I need to look at that one. Right, that's Primulinum. So that's Glomeratum. I need the pair to actually work out which one's which, because one's got a tag and one hasn't. Now both of these are winter resting types, but this one's a little bit different because some people say that Primulinum, although it should go quite dry through the winter, it shouldn't chill down as much as some of the others. Well, mine don't chill down dramatically anyway in the winter, so it gets treated the same as the others. So that's those two. This one's still growing a cane up here. Its dormant cane is the big long one hanging down there. This one is effectively stopped growing a while ago. It's doing autumn on its oldest canes. And this is a new acquisition at the moment. This came over from Alberto in Italy. It was although it doesn't look like it, it's actually a kiki. And this is a phyllum. And if I can get some blooms on that cane, I'll be over the moon. But my main goal is to keep that alive through the winter. So it does get a little bit more water than the others, because it is a kiki in effect, and then grow new canes next year. And there's one other one that's resting at the moment, as if the wind doesn't blow the place down, and that's my Lodigessii. And that gets a little bit of water again round the outside, you know, where there's some bare roots leaving the main mass of moss dry. But as I said, even if I put a little bit too much water on, you know, because I've just splooped it in the wrong place, it's not the end of the world. You know, it's still going to be totally dry within 12 to 24 hours, and then it'll be bone dry and it'll stay like that till its next trickle. Okay, so that's the resting types, and those are they. There's nothing else resting in here. Now, seasonal care. We've just done winter, no feed, trickle of water now and again, don't let the canes desiccate, and try and drop your temperatures down, especially the nighttime temperatures. I won't say the lower the better, because they vary. That would be a bit silly to treat them all identical. They do come from different elevations, so check your individual plants. Some of them are lower down the mountainside and their night temperatures wouldn't be as low as some of those that are a lot higher up. Yeah, so go steady on your minimum temperatures, don't go too mad. Don't go chucking them out in the snow and things like that. Okay, now everything is gentle, bit at a time. I don't do anything sudden. I don't decide, right, I'm stopping watering today. Can you imagine that happening out in the wild? No. Everything to do with seasonal changes is gradual. So the gradual change I'll be looking for is signs of the buds and or new growths, which will then push out new roots. That means the plant is ready to get going again. That doesn't mean it's going to suddenly get drowned with high levels of feed. No, it'll get watered a little more frequently, and then after a bit of that, a little bit more frequently with a little bit of feed, until eventually we get back into the summer care which is very simple as far as I'm concerned. All my dendrobiums, whatever set they're in the summer, in the growing season, feed and water well. Right, that's that done. But then we come out the other end of the season. And for the resting type of dendrobiums, come sort of into November-ish. I mean, I started around the middle of November this year. You effectively give them their last relatively weak feed and start reducing the water. Don't just stop watering them. The plant can't cope with that sort of thing. It needs to be gentle. So I'll be going from watering from every day through the summer down to every other day, down to every third day. And by then I'll have probably stopped feeding, and then every fourth day, every fifth day, until I'm at the stage I am now, back to winter care. So that's really the 4 seasons, very simply summed up, for resting type dendrobiums. Now, why haven't I included my Nobiles in that set? Because I treat them slightly differently. That's why they're in a separate set. I'll do those in a minute. So that's the true winter resting type dendrobiums, 4 seasons, and the care they get. As far as I'm concerned, they don't need incredibly high light in their growing season, but they do in their resting period. You know, in the UK, I can't give these enough light, so they get the maximum light possible. Shade netting off, direct sun when it comes in the glass. It's as much light as I can possibly give them through their resting period. Then as their new growth start and their buds start expanding, I'll reduce that light down until they get into their growing season, where they'll get some shade. And that is trying to reflect deciduous forests. You know, once the leaf cover comes back in the spring, the sun's gone. You know, they're not getting their direct sun anymore. So I try and replicate that. So that's the resting types. Right, the next set are the Nobile hybrids. And when is a Nobile hybrid not a hybrid? The answer is when it's the species, because there can be only one, or when it's got a lot more of something else in it, sometimes many things in it, so that its Nobile content is reduced down well below half. In that case, you might need to do a little bit of research and work to find out how you need to treat it, because you might find another Dendrobium species is dominant, and although it might look like a Nobile, its care might not be. Now this is my Nobile that's nearly behaving itself. Now a couple of days ago I'd said it was behaving itself because there's no signs of buds. Yeah, well, they love making me out to be a liar, don't they? It's got a couple of buds on older canes, yeah, but it's holding off on the latest growths that grew on through. Oh no, it's not. I can just see nubbins coming on one of the new canes, but they are in their infancy. Where are we now? Was it about the 10th of September, December, something like that? They're early. I'd have liked to have seen those buds just starting to form in at least a month's time. So maybe this one is going to bloom early as well. But this is a late winter, early spring bloomer. Yeah. Now, I'm not going to get all the plants down. That one's misbehaving. Yeah. That one's decided to just bloom on this year's canes and on some of last year's canes. Well, I'm not stopping it. So if that's what it wants to do, I let it get on with it. But as a consequence, my care has had to change. Now, where else have I got Nobiles? There's one, it's there effectively, right up against the glass, yeah? And that is a summer bloomer. So in no shape or form does its winter treatment generate the blooms. So yes, it's a Nobile hybrid, and no, it doesn't get treated the same. So this is what you call an awkward set of Dendrobiums for me. I haven't got too many Nobile hybrids, but the traditional care is exactly the same as for resting Dendrobiums. Well, because mine are all hybrids, I tailor that slightly. Now, I don't need to go into it in great detail. Same care, you know, water and feed well in the growing season and get big fat canes like that, and then tail it off as you head in towards winter until you're down to much less water and no feed. They say if you keep feeding them when they should be resting, you'll get a mass of kikis instead of blooms. I can't prove that, and it's never happened to me. But this Nobile is sort of resting, because I have stopped feeding it, and its frequency of watering is very low. It doesn't get a lot. This one, however, is being watered and fed. If I want those blooms to open and do well, yeah, it's not going to do it without any food. It'll totally desiccate the plant. If all the energy to produce those blooms is taken from the canes without being replenished, they'll desiccate. It's in a form of active growth, even though there's no new growths coming out the bottom. So that one gets fed and watered a bit more frequently. The one up in the window that I showed you is called Wedding Bells, and basically that one gets watered with low-level feed as well through the winter. Because of the time of year it blooms, the only thing you're doing in the winter with that is trying to treat it something like it might be in the wild. Well, it doesn't exist in the wild. It exists in my grow room. It's a hybrid, and it's quite a complex one. So that's that set. That's the Nobiles, yeah? Feed and water well in the growing season, get big fat canes, do the best you can. They don't need high light in the summer months. You know, if they get good light, fair enough, but they don't need it. That's the difference. And then try and brighten them up a bit as they go into the autumn and head towards winter. Drop the temperatures down if you can, and reduce your feed down to nothing, unless you've got an exception like this one, and reduce your watering down to the extent that the canes don't desiccate. So you've got to adjust the frequency to your temperatures, your humidity levels. There is no set pattern. You've got to check your own plants and your own environment and adjust accordingly. But if you see your plant, your new canes starting to suck inwards and get big deep creases, it's not getting enough hydration. Now that could be that you think you're giving it enough water, but your atmosphere is dry. So it's losing that very quickly. Whereas with high humidity like I've got, the plant doesn't lose its humidity through the leaves very fast. So I don't need to put as much water in the bottom end. Simple as that. Right, that's that set. Short and sweet. Right, next are the non-resting types. They're what I call continuous growers. And this sea of green up here is a lot of them. Most of the ones you see up here are Latoria or Latoria types, or come from that region, even if they're not truly in that class. So they all get treated the same anyway. This big one up here, that's actually an antelope type. Well, it's not getting rested while it's doing that. Those canes are still growing strong and pushing up new leaves frequently. So it's getting fed and watered on the normal watering cycle. As are the Latorias. They're all growing in some shape or form, yeah? And they don't like to go dry for any length of time. If they do dry out for a short time, it won't kill the plant, yeah? But they like to be constantly moist, but that expression needs to be tailored, because they like to be constantly moist if the temperatures are good. But when the temperatures are lower, like they are in my winters, they don't need as much water because they won't use it, but they still get fed and they still get watered. But I like to get them almost dry or even totally dry for a very short time. That's how they get looked at. And the other ones in that set are the Dendrobium phalaenopsis types. They're all over the place, so I don't need to film them. Everybody knows what a Dendrobium phalaenopsis looks like. And they're all hybrids, some of which are going to bloom soon with any luck. And then we've got some oddities. We've got these two here. This is Harveyanum and Hercoglossum. And, well, you only need to look at the plants to tell that they're growing. You know, the canes on Hercoglossum are growing. You can see all the new leaves, yeah? And even on some of the older canes, they're still pushing new leaves out, yeah? So that one still gets fed and watered in the winter, but, you know, less frequently because it won't use it, and low feed levels. But I don't stop that one. I keep that one growing. Others actually rest theirs, but mine has always bloomed quite spectacularly, and if it's not broke, don't fix it. And then Harveyanum, again, given where it comes from, it would get a little cooler in the winter, and its rain levels would reduce to a degree, but it doesn't truly rest. And at the moment, I've got new growths coming out, and a new root system being generated, so I'm certainly not going to rest it. So that one gets kept going. There are a few others. There's a couple more Latorias up here. Everything else up here is a Kiki, so it doesn't matter. As far as I'm concerned, you don't rest Kikis. They're not a plant yet. They're still getting going. They have yet to establish seasons. Now, in the true reality, the Kikis would be on the mother plant and they'd get the same treatment. But if I separate a Kiki off, it's lost its mother plant, and its only way of supporting itself is through me giving it some feed and water. So I treat my Kikis like all my other orchids, basically. I carry on feeding them and watering them. I hope I'm going to keep this roof today. Flipping getting up without there. Another couple of exceptions. This is Victoria Reginae. So I'm not getting all the plants down because I'm talking about the how, not the what. This one looks like it's going to bloom soon. That'll be a first time. You know, these look like buds, and quite honestly, if these were halfway down the cane or near the base, I'd call them Kikis. But the fact that they're right up near the apex of the canes, they're more likely to be buds. But we'll have to wait and see. And I'm surprised it's even attempting to flower on what are this year's growths, because they normally bloom on you know, old canes, old leafless canes. But it looks like it's going to bloom. There's a Kingianum type up there. Kingianum treatment, strictly speaking, is very similar to resting type Dendrobiums. Yeah, they do dry off a bit in the winter. They do like higher light in the winter, and they do like to cool down, and you will induce a lot of flower spikes if you can do that with them. But any of the Kingianum types that I've got are either young plants or Kikis, so they're not getting it. So that really is the sets. I've got a couple more oddities. There's an oddity down there with those strange markings on the leaves, which is worrying, and that's a no ID. It had a tag with a name on it, and I googled that name, and Google had never heard of it, let alone find out care or anything like that. But looking at the blooms, it's very like Dendrobium unicum, and if it isn't that, it is a hybrid, but it's got a hell of a lot of that in it, and I can see buds forming on that. I don't remember seeing them last time, so that may be going to bloom. Yeah, there are buds on that. So again, that one's a difficult one to actually find out the true care. So at the moment, I'm treating it like normal orchids. Yeah, so even through the winter, it'll get a little bit of feed, even though looking at the canes, it has actually stopped growing. So perhaps I'll cut the feed out for that one and class it as a semi-resting type. So it'll still get some water now and again, especially if it's pushing the buds out. But perhaps hold off on the feed a bit I'm undecided. I'm on the fence. I'll make my mind up next time I water it. No, now it's really going to rain. Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, those are the types of dendrobiums. You've got continuous growers, that's your Dendrobium phalaenopsis, Latoria types, and any others really that come from similar areas. That's the key. Where do they come from? And even if they're hybrids, you know, you can probably track down, I'll put a link in the description to a website where for the more common types of orchids, they're not all in there, but dendrobiums are, you can select dendrobium from the list, put in your hybrid name, and if that site has heard of it, you will get a complete breakdown of what's in that orchid, right back to the 2 original species, because that's where you always start. Because if you think, oh yeah, but this one was a species crossed with a hybrid, well, it'll give you the history of that original hybrid. It always goes back to 2 species. You sometimes have to go back an awful long way though. So that's it, dendrobiums through the year. Resting types, done that, overdone it really, but people do still struggle a bit with it. I mean, I've been practicing a while, even though I get new orchids, you know, they'll fall into one of my sets, and I've already got my head around those sets, so they don't cause me a problem just because they're a new one. They cause me a problem if they are out of season and they decide to start growing at the wrong time of year, and then for that first winter I might have to, you know, not put them in the true resting set and actually put them in the semi-resting set. So your continuous growers, yeah, try and keep them warm. Most of them don't like to get cold. Don't get Latorias and Phalaenopsis type dendrobiums cold. They won't like it. They don't come from those parts of the world. It doesn't get that cold. They might get an occasional cool night, but they don't get generally cold temperatures. The true resting types do get cooler temperatures almost across the board. How cold each individual one can go down to, that's down to you to find out with the ones you've got. Yeah, those minimum temperatures, if you get too low for some of the plants, they'll object. They'll just dump their leaves, when on some of the canes they might not have done if you hadn't done that. It might mean you get more blooms, it might not, because you've chilled the plant down too much. So go steady on your minimum temperatures. I've got no set rule. In here, the minimum it will ever get down to is 12, unless my heater breaks. In which case I'm going to lose some plants, I suspect, if I don't twig it quickly enough. I forgot Hairy Monster up here. Everybody loves to see this one. Oh, yeah, I'm on down. Dendrobium senile. This is a true resting type dendrobium, and under normal circumstances, if I put that into a true winter rest, virtually all of those leaves would drop off, and it would look like a load of hairy stumps. But that's what they look like when they're resting. There's a leafless cane. Yeah, there are a couple. But that is actively growing, and I'm not resting it this year. So that still gets watered with the non-resting type, and it still gets a little bit of feed. But I am easing it down a bit, because most of the ends of the canes are showing signs of finishing their growth for now. But I'm not going to rest that one. I haven't had it long enough, and I don't believe it's strong enough. So that one comes as a halfway house. But it's done well. I don't want to spoil it. This one is getting treated for the plant. And this spring, it's blow the blooms. If I get some, bonus. If I don't care. I want a strong, healthy plant by the end of next year. I mean, look, there's a brand new growth coming out down the bottom there. So, yeah, that one's in a halfway house for this winter. Next winter, I'll think again. Right, feed levels. When I say feed and water well, that's the growing season, yeah? The word well on the end. So, no drying out whatsoever, yeah? Copious amounts of water with reasonable levels of feed. I don't stonk up feed levels for dendrobiums, but I do take it up considerably higher than it would be in the cooler winter months. And quite honestly, with my balanced fertiliser, my maximum feed level for Dendrobiums would be around a TDS reading of 300. Occasionally it might go a little bit higher because I've put a little bit too much in and can't be bothered to mess around with it, but I find that plenty high enough to keep them growing strong. And chances are they might keep growing strong with a lower feed level than that, but that's where I take it up to, because at that time of year I've got a hell of a lot of watering to do. I can't be doing with lots of different feed levels, so practically everybody gets the same thing in the growing season. They all get the same, you know, and that's about as high as I'd go. I would go higher for Vandas and have done, but they're not the subject matter at the moment. So resting Dendrobiums no feed, introduction to feed in the spring when they're going from no feed to some. First of all, I wouldn't feed at every watering. I'd probably stick to 1 in 3, yeah? And it would be a low level, probably around a TDS of 80 to 100. Sort of very low level, just a little trickle to start with. You don't want to suddenly go from nothing to huge amounts, that won't do them any good at all. So everything in moderation. And then gradually, as the water frequency increases, so will the frequency of feeding. So going from, you know, 1 feed in 3, say, it would then be every other watering, and then by the time the new growths are getting going and blooms may be starting to fade, or, you know, or in full flight or whatever, but those growths are starting, you can start bumping up. And through the growing season, as far as I'm concerned, I usually feed 3 times and flush once. Sometimes I feed 4 and flush once, but the predominance is on the feeding with copious amounts, so they really do get absolutely soaked in the growing season. The mounts would go to every day by then, yeah? I mean, at the moment the mounts in general are every 2 days, those that are growing, but as far as the Dendrobiums are concerned, they're not all mounted and they're not all actively growing, so I have to adjust for that. Okay. Phalaenopsis types and Latoria types get lower level feeds in the winter, and probably every other one, yeah, maybe 2 flushes and a feed, but they do get some feed, and it's at lower levels, down near the 100, 150 mark on the TDS meter, certainly no higher in the winter. They won't use it, you know, they're growing slowly, they've got short day lengths, so the feed level gets adjusted accordingly. But again, come the growing season, as those days start getting longer and it starts getting warmer, their growth rate will increase. Well, I'll back that up by increasing their feed and their frequency. So adjust accordingly. And then as you come out of the end of the growing season, canes start maturing, heading towards getting their terminal leaves, they're not going to need the feed. But don't just stop dead, ease off gently, yeah? So instead of feeding 3 times and watering once, it'll come down to perhaps feeding twice, flush once, then feed once and flush. And all the time the level of the feed is dropping off gently until such time as the resting types have got no feed and they're getting watered every 5-6 days for me, sometimes longer. Yeah. So wrap your care around your seasons and adjust it to where you live. Yeah? Not everybody gets these silly short days like we get in the UK. Some people got artificial lights. I haven't, so I'm not saying anything about them because I don't use them, so I don't know what to say. So if you can't say nothing nice, don't say nothing at all. I don't use them, so how can I give advice? So I don't. Okay, so that's what I do through the seasons, and that may or may not be helpful, but if you've got a Dendrobium that you don't really know where it fits, if you see what I mean, you can always leave a comment. I'll get back to you. I might not know the answer, but if I don't, I'll try and find out for you. You know, so any Dendrobium related issues or problems, I may be able to help. I have a lot of them, but obviously I haven't got all of them, so some of them I may never have heard of. Well, you know, I'm in the same boat as you then. I've got the same internet, I've got the same research tools, so I'm only going to come up with the same answer you'd have come up with if you've done it yourself, if you see what I mean. But I'm always willing to help out if I can. Just before I sign off, this one's opening up nicely now. This was Oncidium varicosum, but it isn't anymore. It's something entirely different. It's moved out of Oncidiums. But it's opening up nicely, coming on. And that's the first full bloom that's virtually fully open, although these wings, they will move back a bit slightly. Not as dark as it was last time, but still very attractive. And as Oncidium blooms go, well, was Oncidium, they're relatively large. I won't say they're huge, but they're not bad. Okay, another reminder, please join me tonight. Well, if you're in the States, Canada, that sort of time zone, then it'll be this evening, Sunday evening for you. If you're over the other side of the world, Far East Australia and something like that, you'll be sometime during Monday morning, heading up towards lunchtime or a bit later, but it will be Monday, not Sunday. And as I said, if everything goes well, I'll do another one for the European time zones, you know, at a more civilized time, because 1 o'clock in the morning is not civilized for me, but I'll manage it. Just, it's a one-off, you know, it'd be worth doing. So see you then, hopefully. Drop by, say hi. See you next time.